Go ahead, Sanjit, kick it off.
Okay, hi everyone, and thank you once again for joining us on a Wednesday evening. Um, before I begin, I'd like to announce that this training is being recorded, and a recording of this presentation will be made available for all of you to view later, as well as for those who have missed this session for other reasons. Please rename yourself, your Zoom name to add your city and preferred pronouns. So that will help us to put you in the relevant rooms if you are not able to self-select when we do breakouts for the second half. My name is Sandhya Ladha, and I'm the San Mateo County Advocate at SVBC. And with me, I have Shiloh Ballard, who is our Executive Director. There is Emma Schleys, who is our Deputy Director. And we have John Cordes, who is my counterpart, the Santa Clara County Advocate. Thank you once again. And with that, we'll get started. So the agenda for tonight includes, we'll quickly do, we won't have time to do individual introductions. So rename yourselves to include name and the city you live in. And you can also introduce yourself in the chat. Maybe talk about one campaign you're most interested in. Then after that, we're going to have a panel discussion with two of our panelists who have joined us tonight. We'll be having Jen Walson and Seema Lindskog discussing campaign planning best practices. After that, we'll dive deeper into campaign planning worksheet. So what are the different components of a campaign plan, and how exactly can we work on a successful campaign plan? And lastly, we have all our local team members and the team leaders who will go through their team goals for the year 2021 before we finally break out into groups by city. Quickly, some Zoom basics. So please rename yourself to include your city and preferred pronouns. You can ask questions via chat, and please try to stay muted, and also maybe keep your video off during the panel discussion so that we can have a spotlight on our two panelists. And since the people showing video pop up in the front and everybody can see them. And finally, some meeting guidelines. So make space, take space ratio. So be aware of how much time you're talking versus listening. Allow others also to speak up. Be respectful of one another and our differences. Don't interrupt when somebody else is trying to speak. Try to stay on topic and focus on topics relevant to people present here. Assume good intent. We want to create a welcoming space for everyone, regardless of background and experience. So we want everyone here to follow these guidelines to help foster collaboration. So with that, we are going to come up with our first part, which is campaign planning best practices with Jen and Seema. So let me quickly introduce our two panelists. Jen Walson, like several other advocates, is someone who humbly observed where people in her city were struggling and then stepped up to try and change the situation. In her case, it started with observing how dangerous a nearby street was for her own kids to walk or bike to school. But she also recognized how many other children were being impacted as well with this situation. So she investigated. She contacted people. She showed up at meetings. She built a network of fellow advocates. And eventually, she found a group called Parents for Safe Routes in Menlo Park to make local streets safer. I'd like to emphasize that before she did all of this, she did not know what a council meeting is. She did not know what happens in these meetings. And she attended several of those to get used to the agendas and to get used to their format and so on. And then she went on to sit on several local committees and eventually took that next step to run for city council last year. And now she is a city council member at Menlo Park. Thank you, Jen, so much for being with us today. And then we have Seema Lindskog. Seema is another strong voice leading bike advocacy in the city of Cupertino. She's an executive board member at Walk by Cupertino, which is in all a volunteer group of residents just like you all. Since their foundation in 2014, they have already grown to over 2,500 members. So all the teams who are trying to build local teams, from trying to grow them from 4 to 20 members, ask all your questions to how did Seema work on this to get 2,500 members for Walk by Cupertino. She wears multiple hats. She's an entrepreneur, CEO, and a co-founder of a startup, the Safe Routes parent for Lawson School, and an active supporter at several local nonprofits. She's a great source of inspiration for many of us here who are advocating for making biking and walking safer, all along with full-time jobs. There's a great deal to learn from both Jen and Seema. Hope their stories, followed by the discussion with them today, inspires you all to continue your advocacy efforts in respective areas. So, thank you once again, Jen and Seema, for being with us here today. And I'll ask them to start off today, maybe by introducing how they started working around different campaigns they led in Menlo Park and Cupertino, and then we can break more into questions that we get from the audience. I don't have a preference, whoever wants to start first.
Jen, go ahead.
Okay, hi. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? So I'm really honored to be here tonight to talk to you all about advocacy, which is one of my favorite topics and things to talk about. Advocacy is all of you. So if you learn one thing leaving tonight, is that don't wait for somebody else to be the advocate. You got to look in the mirror and it's got to be you. So as was mentioned in the intro, I got started by just a mom wanting to get her kids to school. One thing that was really effective when I got started was I took a video of the street that was the perilous street that I was most concerned in. So I stood on a street corner with my phone, and even though people gave me weird looks, I took a video. And then I took that video, I edited it, and I blasted it to anyone's email that I could find that I thought had anything to do with that street. So as Sanjay mentioned, I had no idea the inner workings of municipal government, or even if this was a city road or a county road, if it was a school district problem, a fire department problem, a police problem, if at the city level, if it was elected officials I should be trying to interact with, or staff members. So I literally just spent, I think, a couple hours Googling different agencies, looking online, finding email addresses, and put together this humongous email. And some of you might have actually gotten that email because I sent it to a lot of people. And I just kind of blasted it saying, here's the street, it's not safe. What are you going to do about it, basically? And this is before I also realized that tact was a really important strategy to use. And I don't think I was disrespectful, but it hadn't occurred to me that the people I was blasting were probably people I would be needing to network with and meet with 5 years in the future. So always work on relationship building, even if you're super annoyed with someone or you're not sure if they're relevant to you now, because they may very much be a necessary ally in the future. So that's a little nugget there. But when I sent the email, I only got replies from, a handful of people. And then it just became a networking game. So if you don't like networking, get over it, because that's a big part about being an ally. It's really the biggest, the advocate is really relationship building. And so I would encourage, whenever you talk to one person who may be a decision maker or an ally or a partner, to finish your conversation with, who else do you suggest that I talk to? Or can you give me a couple more names of people I should connect with? Always leave one person with a few more names to go and talk to. And then one of the biggest things is you just got to show up to meetings. And meetings can be really, really boring and really, really long. And they might be confusing. And they might use a lot of acronyms and wonky terms and talk about planning documents from 10 years ago that everyone just memorized, and you have no idea what they're talking about. But you really have to just keep showing up and get smarter and smarter and do your homework, because the more you show up and the more you learn, the more powerful you become, because then others will look to you and say, what does that acronym mean? And then you're able to offer them some value. And so it's really about building up your sense of purpose in the community and that you're kind of a go-to person. Another thing I did when I got started was, as they mentioned, I started a group called Parents for Safe Routes. And it's amazing what a logo can do to your credibility. So if you're in a town that doesn't have its own advocacy group, you obviously know of Silicon Valley Bike Coalition, and they can, you can talk under their name if that's okay with them. But if you do have a group and you're kind of trying to do something, think about making it like a brand and a logo. We made t-shirts. We made t-shirts in Spanish to be inclusive. We had newsletters that we would hand out at back to school events with maps. Again, being informative and giving information is really important. We had sign-up sheets at any event that we would be at, always growing your base. So the other big thing I did was kind of looked at the inside game and what I call the outside game. So the inside game is working the channels, the policy channels of the meetings, the city council members, the decision makers, the fellow advocates, kind of being in the different committees and commissions and kind of knowing what's going on. But the outside game is building up a constituency base and the political power and will to apply pressure on those decision makers. So you have to both be working it from the inside and the outside. And so you always have to be growing your numbers. And I'm excited to hear how Seema got thousands of people for Bike Walk Cupertino, which is amazing. The other thing that I know all of you are doing in these groups is coming up with plans. And I actually was going through some old files leading up to this. And I actually had a 3-year plan for Parents for Safe Routes, which I can't believe I did. And looking back on it, some of the things we did, some of the things we didn't do, but we had kind of a vision of where we needed to go. So I think I'll stop here and let Seema talk, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Jen.
Wow, that was amazing. Can everybody see me? So I just realized as Jen was talking that we have a lot in common. So I started this as a mom trying to get my son to school as well. So this whole thing, there's like similarities here. So in my case, though, it was the Redwood Creek Trail that runs close to my house and goes all the way to high school, where my son will go to high school soon. And I knew it would take a little while, like several years potentially, to get that trail opened up. And but I started looking at it and I thought it would be really great for so many kids in the neighborhood to be able to get to school safely. So not just the high school, but the elementary schools and the middle schools. And that's kind of how the whole thing started. But Walk by Cupertino itself was founded when Ethan Wong, if some of you may know, was a young boy who was biking to his middle school and was killed and on his way to school by an accident with the truck. So that was kind of the impetus for it. But, from there, we've grown a lot to just improving walking and biking opportunities and safety and for all Cupertinians across in terms of bike routes as well as trails and multi-use trails and everything. So yeah, so I think a lot of what Jen said is exactly right on. It's like we did a lot of the exact same thing. But for us, I think we have multiple projects going on right now at Walk by Cupertino. So we have an executive board now. It's like we've kind of grown, and we have a 5-year plan, and then we have different projects that we are supporting, like Carmen Bridge is one that's coming up. Redwood Creek, which just went into contract after 3 bruising years of advocacy. But they're actually starting construction on it next week, which is like huge. The Hunibara Trail, it's like the protected bike lanes on McClellan. It's like, so there's like a lot of different projects. And so the format that we have found that works really well for us is for each project, we identify a champion, and usually a pair works better than one because there will be times you will get discouraged. There will be times when you're down. There will be times when it's just, you don't have time. And having two people leading the effort versus one, we have found makes a huge difference. So we try and have pairs that lead a project, and then they can kind of keep each other going. Gather a core team. So that becomes important, and that can be anybody, right? It can be people that are in your organization. It can be people like, PTA board members in the area that are interested and passionate about helping you. It can be, neighbors, anybody that may have a little bit of time and is passionate about your project, becomes part of your core team, because they multiply your reach, because they have their own network. So you have a small core team, and you become kind of the think tank for, okay, what are we doing? When are we going to do it? How are we going to do it? And we have found that that really helps. And all of this, by the way, we have figured out as we've gone. Like, it's like, this is like learning as you go, where it's like, hey, this is actually kind of helpful. Let's do this. And this is what worked for us. Something else may work for you. So you have to kind of find your own path, but just telling you kind of what worked for us. Connecting with decision makers. So just like Jen said, relationships are super, super, super critical. One of the things I'll add is, as some of you may know, like Regna Creek was super adversarial for a long, long time. So we had 3 years of really strong pushback from residents who formed their own little organization, residents along the trail. We had city council members that were supportive of them. So there was a lot of acrimony. And one thing that we made a decision very early on was that we were not going to get emotion-based. We were going to be very, very focused on facts, and lead with kindness, and lead with truth and facts, and just in high integrity advocacy. And that has served us really well. And that was really important to us, that we come across that way, and we are credible, and we're trustworthy, and we are high integrity no matter what. And learning the facts inside out, reading those 10-year reports, being a credible, trustworthy source of data, not just for your supporters, but you establish a reputation. So when you go speak in front of the city council and you say something, they know that you have the data to back it up, and you present the data. So you build up the trust among the people that you're trying to influence, whether they're on your side or not. And that makes a huge difference. I really encourage you to do a lot of one-on-one conversations. Like before you go in front of the city council, meet with each of the council members one-on-one, meet with the city manager, meet with the director of public works. It's like, get to know everybody who has any kind of influence on your project, meet them one-on-one, understand what their concerns are, what they see as the barriers, so that you can address them. And so you go in and you have a clear understanding of where the potential pitfalls are, where the hesitations are, and so you're able to address them. And ideally, when you walk into a city council meeting, you have a good sense of who's going to vote for you and against you already. So it should not be a surprise. You should have a pretty good sense already after having spoken to everybody as to where you're going to net out. It's kind of like in business, right? It's like you don't walk into a meeting seeking a decision without knowing how people are going to vote. Getting influencer endorsements. So that's something, again, we had to learn. There are so many influencers on a project that we didn't even realize were influencers. That came out of left field for us. But the obvious ones are the cleanest ones, right? Like the PTAs, the school boards, the neighborhood associations, it's like the SVBC, the organizations like that. And then we had Sierra Club, Audubon Society, Green Foothills Society. It's like we had people that were influencers that we hadn't realized were influencers. So it really broadens your scope in terms of how you think about who you're going to talk to about this, and who can potentially have an impact, where the city council will listen to them and listen to you because you have their endorsement. Build a mailing list. Yeah, that's the single most important thing. I think build the size of your support base is huge. And the way we did it is honestly not magical. It's like we stood in front of the library, we stood at farmers markets, it's like we stood at the entrances of parks. We had a big map of the project, it's like, and so that people could see it from far away. We had sign-up sheets. We had flyers translated in Chinese. It's like we had flyers in English. We had the 10-point short form. We had the long 1-page detailed form. It's like whatever people had time to read or take home to read, we had that. And every one of those flyers had an easy like QR code or vanity URL for people to sign up to be on our mailing list. So try and make it as easy as possible for people. We were signing people up right then and there. Like we had it on our iPad. We had our little sign up form on the iPad. And as we're talking to people in front of the library, we're signing them up, it's like, and that made a huge difference. So, and recognize that, if you have let's say you have 1,000 people in your mailing list, out of that, you're probably only gonna get like maybe 100 or less, depending on how passionate they are about the project, that will actually, send emails on your behalf or show up at the city council. That's even less, right? So if you have 1,000 people on your mailing list, maybe you might get like 20 or 30 or so that will actually show up at the city council. Though it's easier now that they're on Zoom. So it's a numbers game in a way. And then keep them informed, let them know what's going on, send them data, send them information, and let them know the small successes, celebrate the small successes. So it boosts the enthusiasm. We had barbecue get-togethers. This is pre-COVID, right? So we could talk about how things were going and give updates to our supporters in my backyard or in the park. And that's a great way to keep your supporters engaged and keep them, knowledgeable about what's going on. And then, they have ideas. They're like, hey, let's do this or let's do that. Let's show up all of us dressed in a green t-shirt. It's like, yeah, let's do that. Mobilizing for council meetings. Again, it's like, we're all busy. We all have jobs. We all have lives. We all have kids. We have a million different things. And you have to make it as easy as possible for people. So when we started using like, pre-written emails that people could send like one click, that really helped a lot. So, but then we found that, having just one wasn't great because the city council was getting inundated with the same email over and over again, right? So then we created 5 different emails, it's like from a different perspectives and 5 different one clicks. So they could pick the email that felt closer to them from their perspective. So that created some variety. But having a one-click email made a big difference, just in terms of getting people to participate. And then you kind of work people up the involvement ladder. It's like you get them by send an email, one click, that's easy. Okay, once they've done that 2 or 3 times, now maybe edit your email, write it more personally. It's like about your own story because those matter more. Next, maybe dial in to a call, it's like to the city council, then show up, so you kind of work them up the ladder. And that works pretty well. Showing your strength is really important. In the beginning, we brought just like, a stack of paper saying this is all the people that have signed our petition. Then we had people actually show up. And one of the things that worked really, really well for us is we had a lot of kids show up, and we organized so that the kids would actually, we literally had a line of kids speak one by one. And the youngest one was in 2nd grade, and we had to bring a little stool for him to stand up on the stool to be able to reach the mic. And I cannot overstate how much impact that has when you see a line of kids out the door at the city council waiting to speak in support of something. And the city council, and we worked with the council ahead of time to say, we're going to have a bunch of kids. Can we please have them go first? Because it's a school night, they all have to go to bed. And so the city council knew what to expect. And, so they allowed the kids to speak before all the other residents. And that makes a difference also because you're being respectful of their time, you're being respectful of the time of your supporters, and everybody appreciates it. But showing your strength, the sheer strength of the support makes a big difference. And then the last thing I'll say is stay vigilant until the project is actually, shovels in the ground, because things can change fast. We've gone through, like just on Regnar Creek, we've gone through 5 votes, and it was touch and go many times. And we had lawsuits, we had, complaints to the FPPC, we had, change in the council members, we had all kinds of stuff. So you really cannot take it for granted until literally you have shovels in the ground. So yeah, I have a whole PowerPoint that I presented a while ago at SVBC. I can share it with the folks on this call if you guys want. I'm sure somebody at SVBC still has it. Sandhya probably still has it, but I can send it to you guys if you have it, if you don't want. Yeah, so I think that.
Thank you so much, both of you, for the quick quick description for both of your campaigns. We do have quite a few questions that came up from registration. So let me kick us off. So the first question that a lot of people were curious about, and also somebody asked in the chat, was like, what were some branding and messaging techniques that you used to attract people that may be bikers and non-bikers? In Jen's case, those were parents and non-parents. So what is the message that made people more enthusiastic about the campaign?
Yeah, I think it's going to be specific to your community and to kind of the vibe in your town. But this is something that definitely should be thought out. It's kind of like the defund the police movement. Some, the big bad bicycle lobby sometimes is perceived as kind of the defund the police, and it can get people very defensive and feel like this is not about them. So approaching the work you do with an inclusive kind of big tent perspective, that you are trying to make the streets safer for people of all ages and abilities, that you're working from a toddler to an elderly senior in a wheelchair. There's the 8 to 80 movement. I don't know if you've talked about kind of streets and cities should be designed for people from 8 to 80, which I think it should actually be younger and older, but really kind of making it kind of, again, looking at potential barriers people might have. So when I started, and we named it Parents for Safe Routes, although we tried to repeat again and again that it's open for all members of the community. You don't have to be a parent. So that was kind of a strategic, looking back, it was kind of a good thing because it galvanized parents, but it also alienated some, especially seniors in our community, who had this attitude a little bit like, well, when I was a kid, or when my kids were a kid, they were able to bike and walk. What's wrong with your kids? Or kids today, they're always horse playing and pushing each other. And what you really should focus on is education and behavior. So the more you can kind of frame the work you're doing in a betterment of the whole community, and people are inherently also kind of selfish. And so some people see it as kind of a zero-sum game. So if you're getting a bike lane, then they're getting slower traffic. So one thing I try to do when I talk about bike lanes and active transportation and anything is, this is for the person in the car. Like, doesn't it make you nervous when you have to share the lane with a bike? And so if you can give us the bike lane, there's going to be more people biking, so that your car lane is open more, and you'll feel better. So kind of speaking to people in that way, I feel like has helped a lot. I personally really like the podcast, The War on Cars. And I might personally have like some philosophical, ideological beliefs about traffic and transportation and climate and equity and all these things. But if your goal is to win over the larger community, you have to speak in a way that brings people along with you and wins hearts and minds. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, I think Jen hit it right on. It's like, we talked a lot about like property values. It'll increase your property values. People really care about that. It's like, it'll reduce traffic. It'll reduce parking problems. It's like you have to come up with benefits that are relevant to the majority of the people. Because at the end of the day, it's like, I mean, I'm a biker. I love biking, but and I'm a big supporter of bike lanes. But bikers are 3 to 5% of the population in the city, and pedestrians are 90%. So if it's like a trail, like a multi-use trail, emphasize the pedestrian aspect of it. That it'll be great for seniors. It'll be great for families. It's like it'll be great for people going for walks. And if it's like bike lanes, talk about property values, talk about less traffic, talk about climate change. People care about that. That's more hypothetical. The climate change, we found that had less impact. But if you talk about stuff that, hits them in the pocketbook, or like, we talked about parking in the library, it'll get easier. And that really struck a chord. And it's like, what? Okay, yeah, in that case, that works, So you have to find the pain points that are relevant to people.
Yeah, and you might have to modify your message depending on who your audience is. So if you're speaking to the PTA, they might be sold already if you're talking about safe routes to school. It's
Right.
Healthy, it's everybody wants their kid to have that experience. If you're talking to seniors, you have to look at that angle. If you're talking to the Chamber of Commerce, you might want to have a different angle. And what's weird too is that people don't always believe facts. So there's going to be some people you're never going to win over. So I'm sure SVBC has data on cities that have bikeable, walkable downtown cores and how the business is actually up in those areas. But if you go to a peninsula-based, shop and you bring them that data about why they shouldn't be worried about losing 3 parking spots in front of their business, they're not going to feel that. So you might just kind of move on. There might be people you're never going to win over. So focus on the wins that you can have. And for the people that are always going to oppose you no matter what, just move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we get 2 important learnings here. First is customization of messaging based on audience, and then focus more on the supporters that you have so that you can actually focus on them to build a strong voice. The next question, which our team leaders were mostly interested in, was to get learnings from your campaigns. Like, what do you wish you had known before you got started? Or what are the pitfalls to avoid when you're working on things like this?
Seema, do you want to go or you want me to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, if I had known it was going to be a 3-year effort, I might have paced myself. You know. So yeah, I think that if I had yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the biggest one is like, it's an endurance game, you're not going to have quick wins. You have to kind of strap in for the long haul. It takes time. Everything takes time. Governments take time, and you have to be patient, and you have to repeat yourself over and over again, and you have to find different angles to come at to people. It's like to find and over time it takes repetition, it takes time, it takes talking to the same people over and over again, and you just have to be kind of ready for that. Don't expect quick wins. I mean, if you get it, fantastic, but don't expect it, because you likely won't get it. So yeah, don't get discouraged.
Yeah, I can't believe how similar Seema's advice is to the advice that I have. We're totally aligned in everything. Be flexible and be persistent. Just keep showing up and bring more friends, and take advantage of opportunities that present themselves. Like you might be working on your city and it's going slow, and then the county turns out does something. So you kind of switch over to the county, or the school district is looking at doing something about a bike rodeo. So like for me, I measure success. I think it's amazing that Seema has had these like big things and there's major construction happening. I've been working on this for 5 years, and I celebrate my little tiny wins. And I'm talking like incremental wins. So as long as you're moving it forward, even incrementally, and elevating the conversation and showing that there's another face to this type of planning, because what we're up against as advocates for safe streets is the status quo. And you have people overvalue what is currently the situation and undervalue what can be, and they're afraid of change. And so what happens is, and a lot of times the way city planning works is that the people who live within the plan area are the ones that get notified or the ones that get fired up, and they're the ones that are showing up complaining about something. And there's never kind of that other perspective. And that to me was the magic of Parents for Safe Routes and the magic of Walk by Cupertino and the magic of Silicon Valley Bike Coalition. It's that you're showing that there's a cost and there's a face and there's people who are kind of hurting now and who need change. And so by continuing to be in their face in a kind, respectful way, but so that they can't forget that there is this other kind of angle to look at, is so powerful. And just do it in a really respectful way. I burnt some bridges early on when I didn't realize this was going to be like my life's work. And, you know, some of them are repaired, some of them will never be repaired, but always think that what you could say could end up on the New York Times. I'll just say that. Front page.
That's good advice. I mean, the other thing I'll add is be aware of the long schedules. You know, it's like you know, we have a CIP schedule like in Cupertino, right? And I think most cities have a similar kind of, it's like a 6 to 9 month to a year long CIP schedule. And so be aware of how decisions are made inside the city and what the stepwise approach is, and then when they start talking about projects, where, you know, who you need to talk to, how you need to show up, because, you know, if you miss the CIP window, you're looking at next year now, you know, it's like, and you just lost a year because you missed out on a month of knowing that you had to show up for the CIP meetings, you know, and start talking to the city manager and the public works department. So yeah, just educate yourself, learn about the schedules, ask people, just sit down and talk to the director of public works and say, I want to get this project done. What's your CIP timeline? What does it look like? You know, it's like, and they will tell you. And then, yeah, just show up every time, every chance you get, show up and be buttoned up, be prepared, and just keep showing up. And yeah, I mean, that's
yeah,
like,
I mean, if it were easier than what we're saying, which is reading boring 10-year-old plans, showing up to a bunch of late night meetings, then all this work would have already been done. So
yeah.
It's almost like hard by design. Like it's almost like a video game where there's constantly these like barriers or like wheelbarrows or those like jugs being thrown at you. And you're like, as long as you're continuing forward, then you're kind of winning the game, because it's hard work and it you just got to keep at it. And my biggest advice is care about your local politics. So I ran for office and I won. Run for office. Think about it. Like when I started 5 years ago, I didn't even know one name of my city council. But that's the biggest piece of advice, because as long as you're a resident or an advocate, you're going to be begging decision makers to do what you want to do. So the closer you can get to influencing decision makers, or even better, becoming a decision maker, is where you can actually affect the change. So if anybody wants to talk about running, let me know.
Yeah, probably we can have a session on how to become a council member, like how to start off with being an advocate and then running for council. Maybe one more last question. So both of you included some part about how did you do outreach and get folks involved in the beginning, but how did you make sure that a diverse group of folks is represented, and the voice that you're representing includes folks from various communities and not just the prominent male white?
Jen, you want to go? Shall I go?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this is the challenge of any organizer, community organizer, is how do you reach people? And there's going to be some groups that are easy to reach, like go to a PTA meeting at your affluent, you know, school where there's moms who are just drinking coffee or whatever and have plenty of time to host a bike rodeo or something. Like that might be a low-hanging fruit. So pick those up. But there might be some schools in your city or in your community where people are working multiple jobs. They don't even, English is not their first language. And that's going to be much more challenging. And you want to elevate voices, not speak for people. So this is where partnering with other community organizations that are already in those communities, finding, people who are involved already and meeting, this is what's kind of a bummer about well, there's a lot of things that are a bummer about the pandemic, but one of the advantages of in-person city council meetings is being in the room and getting to know all the other people that are constantly showing up at city council meetings and networking with different community members. So if you know there's 5 people that always show up from a certain neighborhood that potentially is underserved, you know, get to know those people, have coffee with them, see, you know, what their challenges are and what are they even maybe they don't even think there is a need for more biking and walking. So how can you build trust? But like I said, we tried to do stuff in Spanish. It's a challenge. One of the other problems of being an advocate is knowing what to focus on. So I think it's amazing that Seema, you know, that they have a really organized organization, and it sounds like they're very focused on what their goals are. But you're going to want, when you get into this, you're going to start learning so much, and you're going to start, once you start seeing things, you can't unsee them, and you're going to want to fix like 1,000 things and read every plan. And then what's going to happen is you're going to turn into me, where you don't just start thinking about biking, you think about transportation, and then land use, and then housing, and then equity and climate, and then you run for council. So like scope creep is a real thing. So the more you can stay focused and say, maybe in year 1, we're going to focus on these stakeholders and like the low-hanging fruit groups to reach. And then year 2, we're going to like work on community partners. Like maybe you can't do it all at once, but you can certainly have a plan and take advantage of opportunities when they come to grow that outreach.
Yeah, I think for us, we really tried to reach out to very different audiences on purpose, right? And that's why we went to a lot of different places. We went to every single PTA in the neighborhood, went and talked to them all. We met with parent groups. And I think also, you know, like going to like farmers markets and going to the library helped a lot, because you automatically reach a diverse audience by doing that, because we were signing up people that were of different ethnicities, of different age groups, different genders. And it was actually really great, because as we're talking to them, it's like you're engaging in conversations, and they're giving you feedback as to why that's important to them. You know, it's like, and why, and the things that we should be thinking about, like when we're talking about, okay, the trail needs to be good for seniors. You know, it's like a lot of seniors need a place to walk that's relatively flat and ADA friendly. So that was a goal for us to have as much. We created a map. So Jennifer Sheeran, who's like my partner in crime on this project on Regner Creek Trail, we're both like super OCD, and that really helps, by the way. Having an OCD tendency totally helps, you know, because we created spreadsheets for like everything, and we had our full, you know, supporter spreadsheet, and we actually sat down and we mapped where everybody was in the city of Cupertino. So we have a map with like dots on it, and 2,000 plus dots, you know, and that was a little insane. I'll grant you that, but it really gives us, it was great, because when we put it up in front of the city council, we were like, here's where our supporters live. You know, it's like, they're not just in this neighborhood, they're everywhere. And they are every gender, they are every age group, they are, you know, it's like, there are families, you know, it's like, and that really resonated. And then when we came to the city council to speak, or when we had letters, we asked people to send personalized letters, and we had people come and speak who were children, who were seniors, who were, you know, teenagers, who were families. You know, it's like we had every age group and every gender represented, and the diversity of what they were saying as to why this project was important to them. Everybody had a different take. That also makes a huge difference. So yeah.
I think, I think all of that was great information, and hopefully all our teams can use this information when they are working on different campaigns. We do have to come to an end with this panel discussion, because we have to cover the campaign planning worksheet. Probably all the tactics and ideas that you shared as components of a campaign plan will be covered in the next part. So there are some more questions, but maybe I can send those out to you. And if you're available, you can answer those and I can send it out.
Yeah, just email them. We'll answer them via email.
Yeah, I'll put my email in the chat. And feel free to reach out about anything we discussed, and especially if you want to run for office. I'm a big fan of getting advocates to run. Yeah.
Yes, I
Thank you.
second that.
Thank you so much, both of you, once again. Thanks for making time on a Wednesday evening.
Yeah, no, and I just want to add, we are definitely here to help you. We're not just focused on Cupertino. I think, I've spent some time with John and Ari, on Sunnyvale, and I'm happy to help any all groups with any information. So yeah, just feel free to reach out to me.
Great. Okay, so with that, let's move on to the next part. That is campaign planning worksheet. So before diving deep into what is a campaign plan, we have a macro level thing that's a work plan. So most of the teams today that we have here worked on brainstorming what exactly they want to work in for the year 2021 and came up with, say, 4 or 5 goals for their team. And so we sent out a template, which is a work plan. So it includes goals, then identified timeline for each goal, then some strategies and tactics for each of these goals, and then action items or action takers, like who does what under each of these goals. Now let's dive deep into a specific campaign plan for each of these individual goals. So I'll quickly share this. Can you all see the campaign planning worksheet?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a campaign planning worksheet which has been shared with all of you, or you can also ask your team leader. We've put it in the Google Drives. So it covers all what are the basics of a campaign plan, what is the overall campaign goal, expected date, who are the influencers, what are strategies, what are tactics, and then what should be the actual timeline for each of these strategies and tactics. Don't worry, I'm going to dive deep into each of these components. So for any campaign plan, just start with basics. Try to identify a campaign name. Try to identify what is the need for this campaign. What is the goal or vision that you really want to achieve? What is the problem and what is the probable solution? You may not have the final solution, but maybe some ideas around what the solution could be. And then how to implement that solution. Try to identify some description or information about that particular campaign. Where is this campaign located? Is it city specific? Is it region specific? Try to identify the geographic jurisdiction for your campaign, and then work around doing some research and background study to understand where it stands. Then the first and foremost thing is to devise a SMART goal. So what does SMART stand for? Your goal needs to be specific. Like who does your it needs to answer the questions who, what, and where, so that it is very specific to what exactly do you want to achieve. It needs to be measurable so that you can act when you work on that goal for 1 year, you know where you stand in terms of how much you have achieved and how far you need to go. Then another thing is it needs to be attainable. It makes no sense to have goals which are not easy or not something that you cannot attain. It needs to be realistic. Then at the same time, it needs to be relevant. So R stands for relevant. So who is it serving? Is it helping? Does it identify or meet personal interests, skills, and resources? And finally, timely. You need to have a time schedule. So you need to create a time frame for accomplishing the goal. You need to have a deadline. Without a deadline, a goal is incomplete. We also recommend that the team should try to create big or bhag goals that will excite people to get involved. So a BHAG goal stands for big, hairy, audacious goal. It's a compelling long-term goal that is intriguing enough to inspire employees of an organization to take action. Then the next part is to identify decision makers. So who are the decision makers? Is it staff? Is it council? Is it board of supervisors? And who influences these people? Are there community members, businesses, stakeholders? So try to list down all these people. Then comes the tricky part where you actually work on your campaign. So there are strategies and tactics. So strategy is the overarching plan or set of goals that you identify to achieve your goal. And tactics are specific actions or steps you undertake to accomplish each strategy. So there could be multiple strategies. So first strategy, say reading plans. So that will include analyzing data, conducting surveys, preparing policy briefs or fact sheets. Another strategy could be coalition building. So meeting with potential partners, creating a joint platform. And there are several more strategies like grassroots, grass, grass tops, which includes decision makers, communications, which includes email blasts, social media, letters to editor, events, so attending and taking part, or organizing events, and then empowering community leaders, which could be capacity building, trainings, presentations, pop-ups. And once you have identified what are the strategies and tactics, the next part is to assign people with action items. So for example, you have the first identified tactic or strategy where you want to do research, identify the research problem, and then see to identify who in the team is going to work on that part. So I'm going to quickly give an example of the Redwood City ECR campaign plan to understand how we had all these components of the campaign covered in this. So the SMART goal that was identified for the ECR campaign plan was that SVBC will work to incorporate high quality and safe bike facilities and crossings in the El Camino Real corridor plan by July 2017. So you'll see that in this goal, all the components of SMART are covered. So we have a timeline, we know what we want to achieve and by when. And these were the several strategies and tactics that were identified. So there were four objectives identified. There was a timeline behind each of these objectives by when we want to attain that. And then strategies and tactics, like we want to start off with research, and then we want to influence people at grassroots and grass tops. So based on different strategies and tactics that we saw, we have a quick poll to just identify or find out from you guys that which strategy would you like to learn about and which strategy do you think is most important for your goal? Emma, can you pull up that poll?
Are you guys seeing that?
Yes.
Cool.
People have begun to vote.
Yes, we got 24% so far. Oh, going up rapidly.
Yeah, a lot of diversity, so it looks like lots of future topics.
Yeah, this just shows that like all the strategies that we have identified in here, each of this has some kind of a role to play in all the goals that have been identified by teams.
We're at 67%. All right, we'll give you 10 more seconds to vote.
All right, interesting.
All right, closing now. And share results. So looks like grassroots and coalition building are the most popular, although everyone, they're all had some ticks, and grassroots people thought is the most important for their goal.
Okay, so does anyone have any questions for this part?
Yeah, are we breaking out to do this or how's it working?
Yes, so we are going to do a quick round robin with all our team leaders to see what the different teams have identified as goals for next year, and then we'll be breaking out. So let's begin with North San Mateo County team. Katie, do you want to kick us off?
Hi, everyone. Some goals that we have for the North San Mateo County local team are to get the cities, starting with South San Francisco, to adopt a Vision Zero policy, to get the cities and the school districts, also starting with South San Francisco, because that's where the majority of us are located so far, but we're going to work on that. We want to pursue a city or district-wide program for safe routes to school. We also want to work on recruitment so that our local team could represent all 5 jurisdictions that are part of the local team, which is South San Francisco, San Bruno, Brisbane, Colma, and Daly City. And we also want to work on increased bike parking and get up to 5 businesses to install secure bike parking.
Okay, City of San Mateo, right? Can you talk about City of San Mateo team goals?
Sorry. Hi, everyone. Our big push for this year will be slow streets near schools, where we work to decrease the speed limit to 50 miles per hour near the schools. And that's, again, going to be our primary focus so that we can help. We don't have a big group yet, but we're hoping that this will bring in a lot of bikers, pedestrians, help build more community support. And then we're going to continue to ask for smart street designs where we look for areas we can make inexpensive bike improvements, whether repaving, continue to work on North-South Delaware, which is like a major bike route throughout the city, and work with some of the major key players in the city who are on the city staff that make a lot of the bike plan, or our bike master plan, and then improve bike culture. And that's about it.
Palo Alto team, Frank.
So, and I'm sure these will probably be refined as the year goes by, but initially we want to influence the City of Palo Alto budget process because we want to get funding in. And related to that, we want them to resume the implementation of the Bike Boulevard projects and give it some funding. Caltrans is going to be repaving El Camino Real, so we want to make sure that the crossings are safe for pedestrians and bikes and participate in that. The Caltrain grade separation, that's a big effort that's been going on in Palo Alto. We want to make sure that whichever options they choose, that we have safe crossings for pedestrians and bicycles. So similar to the El Camino. And I guess it's recruitment. We want to increase the local team membership, improve the social media and web presence. And Palo Alto has had a very successful cycling event called Bike Palo Alto. With the COVID, it didn't happen in 2020. We'll try to bring that back in 2021. And we want to focus on Vision Zero, which is making transportation safe for everyone, and continue with the really good work that's been done in Palo Alto for safe routes to school.
Moving on to Mountain View, April.
Just unmute myself. Yeah, so most of the goals that are listed right here are really related to budget and CIP, which Mountain View's in a planning year this year. So we do have other goals, but I'll talk to our current goals that are really pressing. Mountain View is working on their pedestrian plan this year, updating it. But we would like to see the bicycle transportation plan get bumped up. It's currently in 2015. And we really think it would be useful to have those developed together as an ATP. Mountain View is also working on what they're calling Access Mountain View, which is a multimodal plan. And so working on those in conjunction, we think is a really good sort of progressive move for them. Mountain View has a Vision Zero policy. We'd like to see that implemented as a plan. They may be working on this already, but we'd like to push for it all the same. Green complete streets. moving forward from Complete Streets, there is a strong, and part of this is coalition building as well. There is a strong community group in Mountain View called the Mountain View Coalition for Sustainable Planning. And in that group, there are a number of bike and ped advocates, but also advocates for greener spaces, green corridors. And there seems to be a movement of when you're a more holistic, integrative approach that also takes into account the, the sustainability of streets. So I'm pushing for that language to be added into Access Mountain View as well. We also want to make sure that there are a lot of, so Mountain View is really good about pushing through projects, approving them and getting them onto a list. But we want to make sure that those current projects that are in there are prioritized and not dropped. So making some efforts there to really monitor and advocate for getting those pushed through the pipeline and actually implemented. And then like some of the others, we do have people who are interested in bike parking, getting additional, their funds for bike parking, but getting those into the right places in the city. Another member is really interested in safe routes to school. So there are a few other additional goals that aren't on this list, but these are the ones that we're hitting up right now because we're going into planning in the next month. So anyhow, thanks.
Great. Next, moving on to Sunnyvale team. Ari?
Hi, everyone. We have a bunch of goals this year. One is to make sure that protected bikeways get included in the El Camino Real Sunnyvale specific plan. We also want to find a way for there to be significant and a dedicated funding source for our recently approved active transportation plan. So that's a very important push that we're pursuing. We recently achieved one of our goals of getting or rather it was we added active transportation plan to City Council's strategic policy priorities. So that's a fun win that we did already. We want to grow our team. Sunnyvale is a free bike rack installation program, so we want to get at least 10 businesses to participate in that, hopefully more. We are pursuing trying to get a study issue to allow bikes being brought into buildings. We have a couple of study issues we want to pass, and we want to restart up a free bike repair clinic that we started doing later last year. And once COVID numbers go down, we hope to do that again.
Then we have Santa Clara team. Gabby?
Yeah, hi everyone. So it's always hard to pick just a few goals for this, but basically one of our goals was to grow our team by 20 new people by the end of this year. The next one was get priority projects in the Santa Clara Bike Plan implemented within 5 years. It's nice they have a list of priority projects. So we felt instead of picking and choosing some of those, we just, hey, let's get those priority projects done within 5 years. Also, as part of the bike plan is a Vision Zero policy and plan. We felt this was significant enough to list it as one of our, call it out as one of our work plan goals. So we wanted to have Santa Clara adopt a Vision Zero policy by the end of this year. And also have them adopt the Vision Zero plan by the end of 2022. We also wanted, we're working towards updating, getting Santa Clara to update their bicycle parking policy. And then the last one here is meet with Santa Clara city staff to establish a more collaborative relationship. And I think that one also was this year. So the last two bullets there were target end of this year, 2021.
And lastly, we have the San Jose team. Brian?
All right. Hi. So I think one of the biggest goals that touches on everything else we'd like to achieve is to simply get the Better Bike Plan 2025 fully funded for the next fiscal year. The city passed a really great policy in the fall, and we just want to make sure that that happens. And of course, for the team, in order to support this campaign and to support the campaigns we're going to have next year, we want to make sure we have 20 active members and also grow our mailing list beyond that.
Okay, so I hope you're all pumped up by all the exciting goals all our teams have today. And since we've already taken 8 minutes from your local team meeting time, I'll not waste a minute more. So you can all, Emma, can you start the breakout rooms?
Yeah.
And And just quickly, before we break out, the next forum is on March 17th, and it is about a lot of goals that were covered by the teams, which is building local teams. So after this session, we'll share the link for that so that you can all register.
Sandhya.
Sorry?
Can you go to the next slide, which has the breakout instructions?
Yeah.
Of how to join, yeah.
So most of you might already know how to enter the breakout rooms. If not, you'll see in your toolbar in the Zoom link, on Zoom, you'll find breakout rooms. So you can click on that, and then you'll see all the numbers pop up, or all the team names pop up, and then you can self-select and enter the local team of your choice. And if you're unable to do so, let us know and we'll help you out.
All right, I'm going to stop the recording now.
Yes.